That's like one of my biggest things is I want to write these stories, but for an interactive dashboard, you can't write it for like every place a user
Never.
can click. So this is amazing.
Yeah, Matthew, when I think about kind of getting that adoption that we talked about with Paul a minute ago, and like kind of inviting people into, I'm not used to looking at a scatter plot and I'm not really sure how to interpret this thing. It's super tempting to try to like write out that narrative and so forth. I'm such a fan of kind of the acquisition that has led into data stories, because I think it can be that bridge of, but what does this mean? What is, like, I know this is probably important, right? Because there's something red on here, or whatever. But like, so what? Like, I don't get it.
Right.
Like, help me. But Matthew Pimenta's not sitting there next to me explaining it to me. And so in lieu of, you or whoever amazing person is building this thing, you now have this kind of data stories component that can sit there and at least be the bridge to kind of explain, like, this is what this means and this is why it's significant. And we want it to go up or we want it to go down and so forth. So I'm super excited. I'm a huge fan of data storytelling.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks for that. And also thanks for touching on the acquisition. That's an important piece there, but I didn't know how to get that into the narrative, but that's definitely a good call out.
Yeah. Yeah, that acquisition was one that happened like right at the end of 2021. And then it was like, how to, with narrative science. And so how does it actually get and become alive inside the product? And so I'm excited to see that it's now getting baked in. And like, I'm super pumped to see the use cases for this. So it'll be cool.
All
Well,
right.
awesome.
So
Cool.
we have some amazing presenters and Tableau knowledge, and we have some time. So we'd love to open it up for some Q&A, and really anything that you guys want to ask, Paul, Matt, Nelson, myself, just let us know.
Yeah, and also definitely open to questions, but also would love to chat to, on potential topics, potential speakers, locations and so forth. So wanted to open it up. This is where things can get really crazy. You guys throw out anything you want into the chat from a question perspective or ideas. We'll kind of read them out and so forth. But yeah. So the first question I see, Nicole, is data story exclusively available to 2022 Tableau versions. Matthew, you kind of spoke to that. Do you want to jump back in and just kind of give us the 411 on when and how folks can begin to use this?
You bet. Well, Derek, that's a great question. And thanks, Nelson. I was actually typing out this response to Derek. It is exclusive to a few things. One is not only 2022, but 2022.2, so 22.2, which is really our most current version right now. It's only on Tableau Cloud, which is the same thing as online. We rebranded it again. So those are your limitations there, and it has to be attached to a published data source.
Very good. Yeah, great question. And I will start singing if you don't have anything else.
Say.
And that's quite the threat. Let's see.
Jen just put in the chat our next user group meeting for next month. While we don't have the speakers yet, you can already go ahead and register for September. And another plug is if anyone wants to, kind of join our list of speakers to tap on, just email us, let us know, put in the chat.
Absolutely. Yeah. And maybe you have something you want to share next month or the month after that. We would love to hear from you. I remember early on, like coming to ATUG and seeing stuff, and I was like, man, like there's a bunch of cool stuff on the screen, but there's some cool stuff I'm doing back at where I am, and I bet it would be cool to share it. And the answer to that is probably yes. So we would love to if you're working on something cool, it's a great opportunity to share that with the community. It's how we all get better.
And I would like to add to that, the differentiator with Tableau is its community. We have a lot of great people doing a lot of amazing stuff with Tableau. Some of it's easy, some of it's very, very complex and difficult. Present, that is that your skill set's going to get better, your presentation skill sets are going to get better, and you don't know who hasn't seen. I can remember tips and tricks. Nelson and I were sitting right next to one another, and the presenter was talking about grabbing special images from the character map and embedding them, so you can, if you wanted to say, instead of saying percentage change and you wanted to have the little delta, so you could just cut and paste it right into that. And we both looked at each other and go, I totally forgot that you could do that. And so there's all kinds of cool things that you can do with Tableau. That could be just little minute things, but it's always great. I can tell. I went to an ATUG I can't remember who was presenting. It was Newell Rubbermaid. Of all things, they were presenting on their recordables and the amount of people that were injured. And that dashboard was so cool that I ended up using that 2 years ago. Or 2 years later, because it left an impression. So everybody's doing a little bit different. Obviously, you want to bring a clean data set and not bring company data with you, but build it upon something like that and show us what you're doing. It really does help you, and it helps the community as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the things that I would do as I would do trainings in the past is I would really try to ramp as I went. So if I did like a 30-40 minute presentation, I want to start pretty basic and then kind of get a little more intricate. And then I wanted to lose a decent portion of the audience by the end, because that challenged the people that were really good. And so you wanted everybody to get something out of it. And so that's another good way as you think about building these trainings at your organizations and coming and presenting is start and then ramp, and then, go back and explain. Matthew, Chris asked a great question that is just would be something be interesting for you. What was the app or feature that you used to spotlight your mouse? I'm curious.
Yeah, that's a great question. So this one I think is for Mac only, but it's called Mouse Pose. Okay. It's like Expose, but Mouse Pose. I'll shoot it. I'll drop a link in here. But worth it. It also does the kind of click and right click.
There you go.
Epicenter thing.
We had a question in the chat about the lenses, and Paul, if you can just talk a little more high level about what is a lens, and is it just for AS data, or when would you use it? You are muted.
A lens basically curates the data set to something that is going to be even a little bit more digestible to your end users. Many times we'll pull in a data set, and I'm this way. I like to see everything. So long as the performance of the dashboard is not impacted, I'll bring across ID columns. I'll bring across things that an end user would never want to analyze. However, a lens takes that, and so perhaps you have IDs on SKUs. No one's going to, or even an ID on a row. No one's going to do analysis really on IDs. You take and say, I only want my lens, when you think of a lens, an eyeglass lens, to focus on this narrow subset of data. And you can have multiple lenses from the same published data source. So you can have, you don't have to limit it to just a few things. If you're working with data sets that perhaps is sales and inventory, you can have a lens solely on sales and a lens solely on inventory. So it just narrows the focus. I did see another question, and this is intriguing. We've got a lot of smart people in the room. They want to, when you press the email icon with the URL, to be able to also embed the workbook name as well in that URL? That's a great question that I don't have an answer for.
It's totally doable.
Oh, is it?
It is the
Okay.
way that, yeah, the way that you would do it. So workbook name is a global variable. Like, so, the way that Paul created that is he's basically using kind of a URL action, but the beginning, instead of HTTP : it is actually mail to : and there's a whole kind of format that you can do that will basically kind of have, hey, here's what I want the subject to say. And because the name of the workbook is a global variable inside of Tableau, you can totally do it. The only question in my mind is whether or not you'd have to do a URL character encoding of it, which is basically means like where there's spaces, you have to like put like %20s. But there's a function, at least in Alteryx, that does that. I can't remember if there's one in Tableau, but that in theory should work. And therefore, in theory, you could put all sorts of data. Now, putting an array like a table would be really tricky. But like where the data point is the same for all data points, or where the piece of information be the same for all data points, like workbook name, should be able to do it. And if you would get fancier, the JavaScript API.
And that's where I would have said, yeah, that exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
that could even.
I think you can do the name without the JavaScript API. If you wanted to do, like insert a table, now you're talking about an array that's going to be a JSON, and that's going to be a JavaScript API.